Welcome back to Inspiring Generations. My name is Celeste Williams. I'm your host. I want to say to the community that we're all in this together, and I know that we're moving forward, and I want to send a shout out to those people who are have loved ones that are sick. I hope that your loved ones are getting better. I want to say that I want this community to heal and for us to move forward and be a stronger community. With that being said, I have a guest in the studio today with me, and she's a community activist, and that's how I met her, through community activism. And she's a phenomenal woman, and I thought that it would be fitting to have her on this setting because she's such an inspiration. I mean, I haven't known her long, and she's inspired me in such ways of looking at things in a different way. And sometimes she's good at calming me down when I get like really, really excited about things. So I thank her for coming, and I want to welcome Miss Devra Zabot to Inspiring Generations. Hi, Devra. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. It's been a while since we've talked, and like I said in my opening statement, you're such an inspiration. You have calmed me down when I felt like I was, really, passionate about anything that I was working on. And you're like, Celeste, hold on for a minute. And that's one of the things that I didn't tell you that I love about you, because you can do that with me. Not a lot of people can do that with me, and I still talk to them. So I thank you for that mitzvah. And, you coming from, can I say, a Jewish background?
Yeah.
But does that entail, deep into Judaism, can we say?
Well, that's so interesting because I was old enough to remember becoming Jewish. So I was, both my parents are Jewish, so we're Jewish. But where I was growing up in Maine, I didn't know what Jewish was. We lived in a very tiny community. We didn't go to synagogue. And it wasn't until I was about 7 or 8 years old that I realized that Jewish was something different. And then my parents opened up a kosher restaurant, and we became instantly overnight Orthodox, which is a very odd experience.
Yeah.
So for about 10 years, Orthodox. So yes, but I think right now, it's cultural, it's family, it is an identity, it's also religion, it's all of those things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting experience because most
sure.
people, when you grow up, you're like, you go to church, you go to synagogue, you just have an identity, that's your religion or that's your culture. For some people do convert, right? But I remember being very young and just having this awakening that Jewish was something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, me growing up in Brooklyn and Crown Heights, and being a young girl like yourself, and my mother sending me notes to the rabbi, and the rabbi giving me chocolate shaped what I think of, that community in a whole, because no one's ever treated me bad, growing up. I think I stayed in that community from birth to 13 years old. So I was bar mitzvahed and, sent on my way to explore other things, but I was set. It was a grounding. And my mother accepted that. She was into the faith, in the Jewish faith, in her own plateau of things, So it was something that we embraced. growing up, but I used to watch the women. And I was always curious, and I want to ask you that. What role did the woman play?
So I can only speak about my experience because my
of course.
Jewish education is very personal. I haven't, it's not like I went to school for it or investigated it that way. I found it kind of alienating. Like there was something I loved about the Orthodox way of being Jewish and celebrating. It's very joyful.
Right.
It is. There's always singing. There is always food.
Yes,
there's always a big family. Like you can't not enjoy that.
Right.
But on the other hand, there's a very strict gender rules, and it was for me, and I think for a lot of us growing up in that time, very alienating because we didn't, you know, the bar mitzvah was a huge thing for the boys.
Yes.
You got to go up to the bima and read
Definitely.
Torah and everything,
about 10
right?
to 13, yeah.
For girls, it really wasn't. It's something that if the celebration happened, it happened quieter, and it felt alienating. Like we actually went to synagogue where the women had, you know, as soon as you were 12, as a girl, you had to sit upstairs with all the other women. So there that division. So it was very polarizing because like part of me, I loved it. I loved sort of the activity and the fun that we would have in that world and the celebration of all the holidays, but then also I know you're over here, you can't do things and you're not worth as much. I know in the learnings and education of Orthodoxy, people will say, well, that's not true. Like women have such an important role. You're raising children, you're contributing to the community, you do that kind of education. It's very crucial, right? But you know, like in our identities as women, that doesn't feel partnered, like that doesn't feel equal.
Right.
I know things have changed. I mean, there are Orthodox rabbis who are female. We had one at the Walnut Street Synagogue.
Now
She was
changing,
amazing, and like hearing a female voice do those prayers and do the sermon, like that was amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It was a great experience. So that, I mean, that is. There are congregations that now are basically like Orthodox female run and men don't go. Okay. So at least women can take on all the roles, but as long as the men aren't there. So it's a really hard conversation. And the other levels of, what would you say, like conservative and reformed, very egalitarian, like everybody's contributes. There's no, they're very aware of not defining gender roles, being very inclusive. Orthodoxy is getting there, I think. It's hard to break that. It's ancient.
Yeah, I think for every community, you know, there are steps that you know, even in the Black community, right? Women, when I was growing up, women were home, taking care of the children, you know, except for my mother, because she was outgoing and she had a trade. You know, she was a telephone operator, so, I mean, she was out of the home, but for the most part, the women in my family, you know, my role models, they were stay-at-home women. Because I remember watching my aunt, she had 10 kids from my uncle Arthur Zimmerman, who is, you know, a beta Jewish, you know. And he was the man that went out and worked, and my aunt never got to explore the whole part of who she was. I saw her as being suppressed.
Well, but I think it's important also, as a woman, you have to be free to make the choice, right? Like to stay home and take care of children is as important and impactful as going out and pursuing a career, right? But you have to have the choice to do that. Right. And I feel sometimes it feels like in some communities, it's an expectation that you won't, that is your role, and it is praised. It's not looked down on, but it's not your choice.
Right. So in the community where we live, I see women doing, you know, more phenomenal things than ever, you know. And I was wondering, do you see women taking more of a lead role in this community as far as bringing us forward?
It's interesting. I never thought about it that way, and I've never questioned it, But it does seem that not everybody, but I feel like the loudest voices in this community and the people who are, the activism that happens is very female driven.
Yeah, I see that too. That's why I asked that question, to the community, at whole, because then they can have a different lens of women's roles and how we define where we live and how we want to live, how we see our community, how we see our neighbor, how we see other cultures, bringing our families forward and educating them in other cultures, letting them know, yes, this, the way we teach our children, this is another culture, but it shouldn't be shunned. It should be something to learn about, explore. You're not gonna like everything about, some other cultures. You're not. You're just not. But we are the first teachers of our children. So when we send them out into the world, we want them to have a broader sense of who lives in their community, and what attitudes to have towards people. Because now I see our youth having a different take on how they see each other as well. So I think that's progress, and it comes from having a sense of self too. Like you said, when you were growing up, what you learned from your community, it kind of shaped who you are. And I'm sure it was a community of women that inspired you.
Well, I don't consider myself an activist.
Okay.
I consider what I do, and it's interesting what your mother said.
Okay.
About giving back to a city that gives you so much.
Those words were like golden.
That's so
Weren't
interesting,
they?
and I never thought about it that way either. But because I lived in LA for a long time. I lived in New York for a long time, and I feel like I loved those cities, and I loved, especially in LA, loved the work that I was doing. I loved it all, but I felt very disconnected. Yeah. And as I started to think about moving back here, I actually went to a city council meeting where I was living in Eagle Rock, and I was like, oh, these are just people from the community that try to help make the city go and become better and make decisions. And I don't know why I never understood that.
Yeah.
And so when I moved here, it was really quickly of, I can't recall, or was this just something in the air that was oh, be a member. Just go find something to do. Right. There are plenty of organizations already here doing work. I don't have to start anything. I can just go participate. Yeah. And that was really inspiring. There's something about the culture of this city, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's many special things about this city. Geographically, the history of it, the people that are here. Yeah. Are specifics about environmental issues that people are very conscious about and actively fighting to protect our health. But there's something in the air that was just oh yeah, we want to go plant flowers. Okay. So I talked to Mimi, who said, go meet up with Celeste, go do some flowers. Yeah. And then we talked to Fit. That to be in a city that makes that participation kind of seamless. Yeah. It feels seamless, and it feels like it's just the culture of this place. Yeah. So what your mother said was so impactful to me. I'd never heard anybody put it in those terms.
Because when we were, I met you on that project, and that day that I met you, it wasn't a really sunny day. It was windy, right? Yeah. And we were out there, and I'm like, how are we doing this? But we did it. We did it together. But it grew into something way bigger than you and I, at some point, where we needed help. with what the next step was. And the people that came out to help, it was very few guys.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, it was more women than
Yeah,
guys.
yeah.
That's when I saw real women power. So shout out to the planting crew from last summer. Devra and I got up early every morning. You know,
Wasn't every morning.
well,
Was to those Tuesday days were really
Yeah,
great.
that's-
No, but I actually wanted to that. I think your question about I think it's real. I don't know why in this city. And I wonder if you have the experience too. And I know that you have the culture because your mother was very get out and do this, right?
Yeah.
This question, and if you have time, there are plenty of families who don't have time
Yeah.
to go march or hold
Yeah.
signs or
That's the
volunteer
truth.
time planting.
Sometimes I don't.
People don't.
I'm not
And
gonna lie, I don't have
and
time.
there's nothing to that's
Don't feel
they're
bad
doing the
about
good
it.
work of
Yeah.
raising their families, right?
Exactly.
But if you have time or you have energy to contribute, it's so important.
Yes.
But this city is the only time that I've ever done that. I've
Yeah.
never done that in any other city. I've never done that.
Yeah.
And I
It was nice.
yeah. Anyway, there is something about the culture here that if you have an inkling about I think I want to contribute, I want to give back in some way,
You can find a way.
You can find a way.
Yes, and that's what I love too. And most times when I do things, in activism, I'm an activist for injustice. I'm an activist for the youth. I advocate and I will be active for seniors, mostly for seniors because that was my career for 35 years. I worked in nursing with geriatrics. So it was fitting in my 50s to come back to that community and share with them, on another level, not just being the caretaker. But now we want to keep our cognitive skills going. We want to keep up with our exercise. You know what I mean? We want to take the time that maybe we're retired and we just don't want to sit home in our little bubble. We want to get out there at 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever age you are. You want to get out there and find something that stimulates you. Not everyone can do it. Some of us are not mobile. They don't have mobility. But we can find other ways, to engage even those people.
I think that's that's such an area that people don't really focus on. It's amazing that you're doing that. And because people have so much to give with all life experience. So even if you aren't mobile, are you helping people write something, learn something? There's so much to be done. And that focus is really amazing, Celeste.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah, and then I'm thinking, okay, when I was at college, right? In my communications class, I had to do a piece on immigration. And it was hard. Nobody wanted to touch that subject. We're talking back in 2006, when I had to present this piece. And it was amazing to what I can relate it to now, because people still need help with citizenship. It's easy to tell somebody, speak English, fill out the application, go. But what if they haven't had a place where they can actually go to get the training or get better educated on how they go through the process of citizenship. So that interests me, and I'm still interested in that. So, our minds keep going of how we want to help, whether it be on that end, whether it be planting flowers to make the city feel a little better. Because as you know, and I'm going to let you talk about this, we were in the midst of COVID, and last year, a lot of people passed on from the pandemic. And the way I saw the flowers was like a homage to people who have passed in our city. That was one way of keeping me running and thinking about it. What was your thoughts as we were going through that process?
Well, that's exactly why I wanted to do it. I remember because I live right on Broadway and right by Bellingham Square, and I was lucky enough at that time to still have a job. I was working up until like July, but home and quarantine, doing the things that we're supposed to be doing, and looking out at my window and seeing people in lines waiting to get food from the collaborative, and seeing people in lines at the bank, and just this feeling like I was in New York City during 9/11, and the days after, like the year after was, it still felt like a giant wound, basically.
Yeah.
And it's I wasn't personally impacted. I didn't know anybody who it didn't matter. Like the city is like an organism, and it was hurt. And I felt like that's Chelsea. Thank God, not on that kind of level, but basically, I mean, yeah, people are losing family members. People are losing jobs. People are very scared.
Yeah.
People didn't have food. They didn't know how they were going to feed their families. We were all like terrified of like what this thing was.
Yeah.
And we had the worst possible person in place to be leading us through it. So like on all levels. Here in Chelsea, we had some fighters and some people that were really like pulling the community together and getting things done. A lot of women.
A lot of women.
Getting everybody like organized, and let's do it, and let's take care of those needs. So I did food deliveries, I joined in the calls, whatever way I bought masks, like whatever I could do, I contributed. The flower thing really just came out of looking out of my window and thinking like, can we please get something that's just kind of like what you said. I don't think I would have thought of it as an homage, but it was like, it's springtime, it's growth, it's color, it's something nice for you to look at as you're walking by.
And it also was a conversation piece. It also was a conversation piece. Because as you know, in the midst of this, no one wants to really speak to anybody.
No, so you can talk about like, oh, these flowers look so nice, or are they doing good? Whatever that is. It was definitely for me. It was definitely like it was simply a way to brighten days. And I understand if people think, well, like, okay, people need money and they need food on their tables and they need jobs back and they need to not feel so scared. And all of us were going through that to some extent with some of those issues. That the flowers may have seemed inconsequential, but I don't think they were. I think for a lot, even if people were walking by and like looked over and saw color and brightness, that was great. And yes, it brought us together. It was like something I look forward to every week.
I met a new friend through it.
New friends. It sort of reinforced how the city really supports. You have some idea, even in the midst of a pandemic, if it fits, how we can support that. Right. It brought color. It opened up opportunities to speak to like store owners. It opened up opportunities. Every time I was up at the gazebo watering those flowers, somebody would walk by and say, thank you.
Right.
Or this is so beautiful, or whatever it was.
Yeah, and it took them,
for a second.
Like the elder woman we met, she was on the show, actually. Miss Grace, she, one day she, wasn't in her, her bubbly senior mood. But just seeing us out there doing that, and I engaged her. And I said to her afterwards, how do you feel now? She said, that was great.
Yeah.
She said, I was feeling down, but once I got involved in digging in the dirt and, actually putting the flower in the soil, it brought a new revelation even for her.
Yeah.
That life is not that bad. in that moment for her, you know.
Or that there's just hope, or things can grow. Things
nice
can
mitzvah.
regrow. Yeah.
Mitzvah. Yeah, so that was one question I wanted to ask you, how did you view it? And I'm happy that you viewed it not the same way exactly as me, because I was in a river like, people need to volunteer. I understand.
Well, Celeste, you say all the things that I think, and I'm just like, okay, we can be calm, Celeste. It's okay. So it was good to have you say that.
It's a mitzvah, for Christ's sake. It's an act of kindness. Let's do it. But yeah, it was fun, and I hope the community can get engaged this year in that project, because it's pretty much set on the foundation now. So if when things get running and up, and Devra and I call for volunteers, I hope you're up for the job. It'll be fun and amazing. Trust me. If you could see a flower, my metaphor, as a form of life that can be very fragile, you've seen that. One day the flowers were like, hey, and then we had that cold air come through, and the next day they were like, oh. Remind me of a human condition sometimes. But
it's true.
This is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So you're into film. Mm-hmm. You're into film. And it was amazing to see you in your element. As a, directing, and you brought some things out of me to talk about that I don't really I don't talk about. Even when I interviewed my mother, I went around that sentimental. I think she's strong enough now that she would have talked about it. But I also as well like to see my mom moving forward as another woman. Not just as my mom, but as a woman, an elder woman that still wants to do things, and you don't want to take that independence away, right? So she's either encouraging me, and I don't know if you heard, I told everyone that I had to share her with everyone, and I still do. And it's a good thing. It's all good. And I love that part of her because she's so giving. But when you were doing your film, we had to talk, I talked about some things about my mom, how she was an influence, how she inspired me. And on the other end of it, while you were on the other side of the camera, I was thinking, how is she inspired to do film? What inspired you to be behind the camera versus in front of the camera?
It's so, I was talking to a friend of mine that I've known for a long time, and I was asking him like the same thing. Like, what was it? Why? I mean, do a lot of, when you're young and you go to the movies and you're like, oh, I want to do that. Do a lot of people think like that? Or some people think, I want to write something like that. I want to direct something. I want to be in front of the camera. Or you go and you're inspired to become an astronaut or a doctor or something because you see somebody's story and you're very inspired by it. So why did I want to do that? I don't know. There are two films of my youth that were very impactful. One, of course, was Star Wars, which I think was the first full movie I saw in the movie theater, and it was the whole family. I was sitting next to my dad. I think it was, of course, packed, and I was just I'd never seen it. I didn't have any context for that. I was like, oh my God. And then the other one was Casablanca, which I saw because my parents decided because they didn't want TV in the house, which I appreciate now, but it was very alienating when I was a kid. I didn't have anything to talk about with kids at school, right? You didn't talk about the shows, whatever. Right. So we didn't have TV, but what they did was they bought a projector, and we had a 10-foot screen in our house, and so then we had beta tapes. Do you remember beta VHS?
Yeah, beta tapes.
Yeah. So the first film that we screened at the house was Casablanca, and black and white film. Like, it was just gorgeous. It was just gorgeous.
I still love them.
And I think because of the beauty of the film and the way I was like, oh my God, that's the memory, or that's the memory I tell myself.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, I want to be a director. Like, somehow that's what I wanted to do. I'd always listened to stories on the radio, which I loved. I read a lot. We watched a lot of films that I wouldn't have access to if I'd been, if we didn't have that. We lived in Bangor, Maine. The access to our films were pretty limited. And it was I think it was the seeing other people's, like, across the world, right? Like, so all these different cultures and all these different stories.
Yeah.
I directed in college, I directed theater. But then after that, I did the typical thing that most women of my generation did when we were like, oh, I want to be a cinematographer. Oh, I want to be a director. You had to be a sort of a level of confidence that I didn't have.
Okay.
I just didn't have it at my age.
Okay.
At that age, I didn't have it to become a director. That's really all I ever wanted to do. Okay. So, of course, I became a producer, like creative development, like all the stuff that typically women of my generation did. There's so many female directors and female DPs now, and it's so inspiring.
Isn't
And
it?
I like that really. When I interviewed you, when I did those interviews, that was really the first time that I was on the hot seat, like that I was there. I'd done a lot of behind the scenes work. I'd helped people put stories together, but that was the first time I was direct, and it was everything I had wanted it to be. You all were amazing too. Like, you were so generous. You were so generous and so vulnerable and so trusting.
Yeah.
It's a huge ask. So I thought I had a really great experience. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to do more of that.
Yeah, I thought that was, I saw you in a different light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus where we started, in our friendship, to seeing actually what you do for work. And I told you what I do for work. And, I would be at the nursing home right now helping people if it wasn't for COVID. Like, I would be, like, I'm retired, but I work on my own terms. I'll do per diem sometimes, but I'm not like 35 years, in that setting. But I still would go back, and I wouldn't change a thing, of volunteering, going and feeding someone, or doing someone's nails, making them feel important. Just little things.
It's so interesting that you're talking about, because like when you told me what you do for work and what you've done most of your life, I have an understanding of that. I've been around nurses. I've been to hospitals. I have an understanding of what that is. I have a great appreciation for people who are in the nursing field. Like, they work the hardest of everybody. But yeah, when I say I'm a producer, like, nobody has any idea what that is. Nobody has any idea what that is. So it's interesting to me that you're, and it also, I think that was part of my issue. Maybe when I was younger, I was like, so I'm going to make films. Like, am I contributing to the world? What am I really doing?
Yeah.
Right. So I like lessened that, and it's been interesting during this time period of the pandemic where I've realized, like, if you do take the arts, because all the arts had to close, you take the arts out of a community. That is not a good thing. That is not a good thing.
Don't do it.
And that was, I think,
don't do it. Yeah.
I hope a lot of people understand that now, because people do think of that as a luxury item when it really isn't necessarily. And it's so important for people to continue to tell stories and have that kind of outlet.
Everybody has a story, right? Everyone has a story.
Yeah.
But it's your story, and it's up to you if you want to tell that story. And someone can capture it for you, like you did with your film. Capture those stories. Those stories will forever be capsulized. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that, everything was aligned where I can actually do that. And it was amazing. So I'm just intrigued by what women are doing, because this month we had so much going on. We had Women's History Month, and we had, St. Patty's Day, passed, but I was still reflecting on him as well, St. Patrick, because his story is deeper than what the commercial
Yeah,
part of it
yeah.
is. So I like to take away from the commercial and get to the deeper part of, what's not superficial, let's say. Can we build on something deeper than just, can we understand that culture just through what we see on TV? Or could we understand it best if someone's sitting like we are and having a conversation and opening up a real conversation about the events of that time? Even if it was way back then, we can still apply some of the principles,
But I think it's all they're all tools. There's not like one thing, right? It's all these tools that we need. And that's why I'm saying, like, in terms of the arts kind of disappearing or us being removed or having them removed from our lives, like not even being able to go to a museum.
No.
Right? And how often it's like, oh, I'm going to go to the museum. But like, or being able to go to an art show or being able to listen to poetry or comedy, like whatever that is,
Exactly.
that's a significant tool, as well as being involved in community, as well as, working with people, as well as just having conversations like this. Like all of that combined so that we do have that kind of understanding of each other.
Needed.
Yeah.
It's much needed. And lastly, is there anything that you can say to a youth or even an older person watching this program about, film, how to get into film?
So it's well known that there are many barriers to entry to filmmaking. And filmmaking, as we're talking about, I would just say is like very general. So it could be anything from making a PSA to making a feature film. Like there's lots of different video content. A lot of people are making content on TikTok and Instagram, and like we have like the tools.
Yeah.
There are plenty of barriers, and I think the thing to do is there's plenty of resources as well, and there's far more open doors than there were like 20 years ago.
Okay.
And because equipment, the huge thing is equipment's totally cheap. With your cell phone, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
You can make a feature film on your cell phone. So I would say is focus on what you have, which is you, your point of view, your passion for storytelling, who your friends are.
Exactly.
How many cell phones can you get together, and what editing program can you use? And there are also tools like this, Chelsea Cable. There's I'm a resource if anybody wants to talk to me.
Exactly.
But I think the big thing is asking a lot of questions, and there's always challenges. There's always a challenge. So you just keep asking a question, you go around that challenge, go around that challenge. And I think the best thing, especially if you're a young person, and you have the time, basically, right? If you have the time, if you're in a situation where you can take a Saturday and go make a film with your friends, go make a film with your friends.
Yeah. You heard that. You heard that, right? You heard that right here. If you have the time and you're up for the challenge, you can do a film because we have the tools. That's what Miss Devra Zabot, inspirational talk for you in the community today. I enjoyed having you on this program with me. There's so much things to talk about with women involved. And speaking more about film, this year, on the lighter side, on the Oscars, I seen more women producers,
directors
and
too.
directors. Wow, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yet, if you look at the statistics, it's still tiny. It's a tiny amount. I think, I mean, the good thing that has come out of the past couple of years is just it's having people on all sides sort of break it apart and understand you have to break up the paradigm that's been accepted. I think even for us, for women, sometimes we have to take a step back and think, okay, well, do we not like this content because it's female oriented? And somehow in our minds, like, oh, but that's not as important. Like, there's so much we have to break down internally as well as externally to like decide whose stories get to be told and why they're important. Have you seen Nomadland? It's Frances McDormand's film. That's one of the ones that was nominated. Yeah. She's been, the film has been nominated for like director, screenplay, editing, like Frances McDormand's been, it's like 6 different categories, I think, right?
Oh my God. It's great.
It's a hugely impactful film, and I kept thinking like, I don't know that would have been made that many, because it's a woman's, it's not even just a woman's journey. She's retirement, like she's almost retirement age, older woman, no makeup, short hair, like nothing about her.
Raw.
So
just raw. Yeah. I like that organic.
Like,
it's very
so
organic.
inspiring to see that film. Gorgeous film. Just the weight of her story being so impactful and being given like the gravitas and the respect that it deserves. I don't feel like, I feel like it's new. And I know those films are out there, but I don't know that they were nominated for Academy Awards.
But they're out there.
They have been out there. It's just they haven't been given the platform.
Right, but sometimes they don't even need the award, to manifest the greatness of the film.
So I'm so anti-awards. Like, I think awards are dumb, right?
I don't think awards should be given for everything.
Because how do you define, like, what's the best film? Like, how do you define?
Exactly.
It's a very, like, and then who gets nominated, and then there's a bunch of politics. Yeah. But, like, this is the first time that I was like, if any film deserves the nominations that it received, like Nomadland deserves it. I know there are a bunch of others on that list, but like I was it was like, thank God, this is like the first time I've watched it and been like, oh yeah, I get exactly why. That she's been nominated.
I understand totally what you're saying, because when I see people get awards, right, on those platforms, in film. And we could talk film because you're into film, so we could talk film.
Yeah.
When I see them get an award, it seems like for some, I don't see them return back into the field anymore. It's like the epiphany of the highest where you can go. Like, it takes a while for me to see people that win awards even act more on. You would think if you get an award, it will drive you to.
No, it's interesting. Like, so I feel like some people have said that you get those awards and then it's almost like you can't ever achieve. Yeah, there's. I know there's something like interesting there.
I just see it, in like the Hollywood.
But maybe that'll change now, because I don't feel like this is vanity, like the way this was awarded. And also, it's also important to understand that the demographic makeup of the Academy that does the nominating for the Oscars is completely changed, because it used to be people who were 70 plus, mostly white men.
Okay.
And that was, remember there was a thing that Oscars So White or something like that, 10 years ago. Like, there was a very concerted effort to change the demographic makeup culture, right, of who the people were who were doing the nominating, so that it wouldn't reflect, and I'm sure not all of the people in the Academy were like this, but it wasn't like, oh, I didn't watch that film, but I really like that director, so I'm going to nominate that film, right? To shift it to people who come from a diverse background, so it's a very inclusive group of people, age ranges, ethnicities, genders. So when people are looking at the films, they're looking at it from very different points of view. Yes. So you have a better sort of serving up of what
Yeah, I
people think are the best films.
It's a better playing field, because inequity and gender inequity. A man makes a dollar. A woman might get like what, 62 cents of it,
Is that,
or
yeah.
75 cents, and then forget the minorities. The minority women might get 50 cents of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. And
so
it's also like,
we're still working on a lot of women's issues.
yeah.
And I think women are taking this month to really embrace and reflect on what other women are doing as well, to bring them along. Because it's not like holding your hand, but it's like, hey, we can do this, And I like I said, early on in this segment, I've seen women step up and do some phenomenal things in this community. From the elders upstairs in the quilting room that make quilts for the children's hospital, for the artists that were in the art room, working tirelessly for each holiday. Before Halloween, they're like in March, they're making pumpkins. You know what I mean? And it was just inspiration in that environment. So what I want you to take with you as you go along your journey is that there are women that look up to you, and you have them in your own family, okay? And they are going to inspire, more generations of women just by having strong women like yourself and your sister and your niece. And you have another sister, I believe, right? How many sisters do you have?
I have 2 younger sisters, so Naomi, and then Rebecca's the one who had all the kids.
Okay.
And that's Rafi, is her daughter.
Rafi is a sweetheart. Yes. Devra's niece is active in the community as well. I had the pleasure of meeting her at one of the food distribution sites. Lovely, lovely, lovely young woman. She's our future. No matter where she goes, she's the future of, of what it looks like to be a strong woman and okay in your skin. And I love that. But I also get to see where that comes from, and she's truly blessed. And I think that we are going to be running out of time soon. So, Devra, I want to thank you.
Celeste. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on Inspiring Generations, sending out a message to the community of inspiration on film, community service. She said she's not so much an activist, but she is active in service in the community. And we just want to inspire other people to get out and just be active in the community and serve. You don't have to actually be an activist, but you can be active. And I'll leave you on that note. Thank you for watching. And come back and see another generation inspire us, okay, on this program. And I'll leave you with that.